are we ready to get started?
I'll just beat up.
I have no idea what time it is.
Otherwise we'll steal that one.
All right,
That's fine.
first on the agenda is the oath of office. We have 2 new board members, or trustees, I guess I should call them. Okay. Kate and Kathleen Cohorst and Janice Norgard. All right, I'm going to read these together because I don't really want to read them. I, Kathleen Cohorst and Janice Norgard, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my ability, discharge all the duties of the office of trustee of the Myrtue Medical Center in Harlan, Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law.
I will.
All right, we'll get these signed and given back. Welcome. All right, the next on the agenda is the approval of the board committee assignments. I think they were discussed and shared with you. Is everyone satisfied with their assignment?
I move the approval of the board committees.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second, or I need a second, thank you.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The annual conflict of interest disclosure statement, Ruth will hand out. We can fill those out and give them back to her after the meeting. As stated, we do this annually. Next is the review of the hospital constitution and bylaws. Is this an answer?
Yeah, we're required to review them on an annual basis, and we don't have any changes this year, so really don't need to have approval for anything today. But it does need to be mentioned that it's been reviewed in the minutes. Then the next item, we do need to get approval from the board of our annual review of contracts for patient services, and that's on pages 4 and 5. Hopefully you've had a chance to review that.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion, concern before we call for the vote? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The approval of the annual investment portfolio review, Christie.
Nice.
Is it up there? Yeah, it's kind of tiny. It's in your board packet also, so we just go through annually and do our average yields on our investments. We've added quite a bit this year because we're trying to, we had enough additional cash funds and rates have been improving. So we've invested into multiple CDs through local banks and LPL Financial, and also have been getting some treasury notes. Of course, we have to watch internally within the state of Iowa. All banks are in the Iowa Trust Fund, so we don't have to stay within the $250,000 federal limit, but when we go out with LPL, we have to watch that we're not investing more than $250,000 because they're in multiple states. So we really have to watch that. But New York Life, the market really hit us pretty hard there. The investment did go up because we invested another $1 million with them in January of 2022. But we've come back. Overall, we've invested $2.2 million with them, and we're almost at 2.8. So still overall a good rate of return there. Shelby County State Bank, we've got some CDs there. Average of 3.6. The Iowa, it's IPAID, it's Iowa Public Trust Fund. We had a treasury bond with them that we bought about a year ago, and it did come due the end of February, or excuse me, the end of January. So we will be investing that in a higher rate CD. A Defiance State Bank, we've got $500,000 there. Farmers Trust and Savings, we got $500,000. Mid-States, we got $7 million. UBI, we have almost 4.1 million. That rate is a little deceiving. We have some 0.55% CDs that matured in January and the 8th of February here, so that will drastically bring that rate of return back up. So we'll reinvest those in higher rate CDs. Town and Country, we have some LPL, we got 1.5 in CDs, and Treasury Notes is 2.432. A lot more interest receivable because we have a lot more investments. So our other assets, so these are more of a restricted or long-term investment, which is our Health Partners of Southwest Iowa investment. It does look like it, it's gone down from 601,000 to 207, but we had a distribution of $500,000 from that, so that's why that went down. Berkshire Hathaway is still maintaining a positive growth there, so that's good. Some of our designated funds, which would be basically our health insurance fund, where we keep, since we're self-insured. So UBI, there's a small CD there, that's coming due 4/16, so we'll have to wait to get higher rate of interest on that. The money market at Shelby County State Bank is what we use for the cash flow. We did invest some of that into a CD now too, because we don't need that cash on hand as much. So on average for the year right now, we have 23.9 million in investments, and it averaged at 2.5%. All of our planning that we're doing with reinvesting these CDs and everything, we're doing it as a cash flow to kind of see as we move forward with the ED project and any other project, we want to make sure we have the cash available. So we do watch that every time we do invest some more funds. All of these are 12 months or below, just because rates can fluctuate, and we kind of and we want to make sure that we're keeping in track with what our cash flow needs are. Any questions on the investment report?
Questions for Kristen? We could get a motion to approve the annual investment portfolio, please.
Also move.
Thank you, Tom. Second. Mike? Any discussion, concerns? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The minutes were in your packet from our meeting November 29th. I assume you've all had a chance to review those. If I could get a motion for approval on those.
I'll move the approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Terry. Second, please.
Second.
Jim, is that you?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. All right, I don't see a Dr. Brian Anderson in the room today for our medical staff meeting summary.
That's me. So Dr. Anderson is the new chief of the medical staff for the year, and they are all at trauma case studies this morning, so that's why he was unable to attend. The medical staff meeting was a combined medical and operating meeting on January 17th. A few things were reviewed. We do have our new Tiger Connect communication system in place. So one thing we talked about with the medical staff is that they cannot text orders through that system. That is a CMS regulation, so it's not something we impose. That is regulation, so just wanted to remind them of that. Kim Burchett was with the group, and she talked about their ACO kickoff meeting they had, and there was a lot of discussion on annual wellness visits with the medical staff in the clinic. We also discussed some inpatient coverage, so when a provider is absent, it covers their inpatients. We reviewed the rules and regulations regarding that, and how they make sure to notify everybody of who will be covering patients while they're gone. Larry gave his report to the medical staff. Christy reviewed the December 2022 financial statements. Mary Peterson talked with the medical staff about outpatient consults and health coach orders that are now ready in Epic for them to utilize. And because we do have our new communication system with the Tiger Connect, we asked them to turn in all their old pagers. So they had to part with them. But they did very well. There were no tears shed. That's everything unless anybody has any questions.
Questions for Karen? All right, moving on. Quality deferred, okay. We're up to the Personnel Committee report. Jim?
The Personnel Committee met this morning at 7 o'clock. There were 5 initial appointments, there were 7 reappointments, and 2 voluntary withdrawals. Everything was within order, and I would make a motion to approve those initial appointments and reappointments with the voluntary withdrawals.
Okay, we have a motion. If we could get a second, please. Mike seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, Nicole. The approval of the capital purchase for something.
For ophthalmology equipment. So, I'm Nicole, I'm the nurse manager in the outpatient department, and then Kelly Lynch is the perioperative nurse manager, and so she apologizes that she's not here today. She had a family obligation, but we'll go ahead and move forward. So, right now at outpatient clinic, when our ophthalmologist comes out, we obtain the ocular measurements manually. So they actually bring out 2 of their own techs and they do this all manually, so it takes a little bit longer than if they had a piece of equipment. And then in the OR, their current, I'm not gonna say phaco emulsification the whole time, so we're just gonna call it the phaco machine. Their phaco equipment and the microscope that they use are, I know the phaco was purchased at least 10 years ago and it was purchased used, so it is at end of life, and the microscope is as well. And I think neither of us can figure out when the microscope was purchased, but we know it was greater than 20 years ago, so it's been quite a while. So there's some pictures up there. As you can see on the upper left is the microscope. So that piece of equipment is used in the OR and it's used for the entire procedure. Because you're working on a delicate portion of the eye, you're working on the eye, which is delicate, and then also our current ophthalmologist instruments are like kind of microscopic, so you do the whole procedure using that microscope. And then the phaco machine is utilized we're talking about mainly cataract surgeries. So the phaco machine breaks up those cataracts and then removes them from the eye so that the new lens can be placed. And then the 2 pictures on the bottom are an ophthalmic biometer. It's the IOL Master 700. And that is what we would utilize in clinic to take measurements that are a little more accurate than the manual measurements we take right now. So there would be improved precision with obtaining the measurements, like I've said, and then also carrying out the surgical procedure just with that new equipment. And then we'd be following best practice guidelines so that we could provide the best possible outcomes for our patients. The equipment would meet any needs of any ophthalmology group, so in the future if we decided to grow and bring in another group, they would be able to utilize this equipment as well, and then it allows us to continue to provide these services to our community. There would be an improvement in both provider and patient satisfaction. So on the clinic side with the IOL Master, it would allow us to see more patients, get them in quicker, get those measurements taken quicker. It wouldn't take quite as long. And then provider satisfaction, our current ophthalmologist has requested to purchase this new equipment to help, make procedures faster. So hopefully we could do more procedures in a day when he's out here in the OR. So like I said, we have increased ability to see more patients in the clinic and do more procedures in the OR each month. Right now he comes out once a month, so as much as we could increase those, the better. There's a potential to complete more difficult cataract procedures, so special lenses if we had the new phaco and microscope. And then ability to increase coverage if we decided to bring in any other ophthalmology groups, they can use that equipment as well. So most important part probably, the finances here. So for the Centurion phaco machine and the Alcon Luxor microscope, it's a combined cost of $112,000. There's a 12-month warranty for each piece of equipment, and then Kelly was working with the provider to talk about service contracts, or the rep to talk about service contracts with that as well. There wouldn't need to be any updates to the facility to bring these in. And then on the clinic side, the IOL Master 700 comes in at a little over $65,000. Right now, it comes with a 12-month warranty, and they're doing a promotion for another 12 months, so we'd get a total of 24 months. And then again, no updates to the facility as well. So what we would like to do is recommend that we purchase that Centurion phaco machine, the Alcon Luxor microscope, and the IOL Master 700. Any questions at all?
And that total amount would be?
112 plus the 67.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Just want to make sure the board was aware.
Yes.
there any questions? If I could get a motion for the purchase.
I move purchase of both pieces of equipment.
We have a motion from Kate, second please.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, my voice. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Jacobson, your turn.
I think I'll go ahead and let, got Brent Sheedy here from the agency, and we're gonna have him review the 2023 insurance coverage. Let him go ahead and do that first. I think, do we have a slide for that?
I think everybody did get a one page of the same thing.
Yep.
So, I mean, very simply, these are line items. There's 40 pages of this that Barry and Christy and I, and then we actually partner with FNIC out of Omaha. Larger carriers, brokers have access, essentially like for the medical malpractice is obviously very important for the hospital. So we partnered with FNIC in the hospital for the last three years, I think. 3.5 years ago, the hospital did I'm going to say bid spec out with multiple brokers, and we interviewed them, and we spent several hours kind of doing that, and then decided and settled on First National in terms of them being the main broker on the account. The first item you'll see is property. This is one of the main challenges in the insurance industry is property, both from multiple standpoints. So we've had storms are really bad in the Midwest the last 10 years. We were at a seminar here for the school program 3 or 4 months ago, and Iowa used to be a top 10 state, meaning good with weather, and now we are in the bottom 10. So when you think bottom 10, to me, I think Florida and California and the coast, and we're in that bottom 10 with them, which is kind of weird, where we used to be a top 10. So we've seen significant rate pressure the last 3 or 4 years. You guys are not immune to that. I mean, other public entities that we're not sharing anything. The counties went up 20% this year. The city's in the same boat. The other pressure piece to that compounds it is construction materials are way up. Everybody knows. So if a carrier had to take 20% pure rate, but then they also have to increase your building limits by 15 or 20%, that compounds the problem. So we're seeing significant increases in property. We did a pretty thorough engineering estimate for the buildings this year and ended up even tweaking the main hospital building a little more after further discussion. So we go through that in great detail every year. 2 years ago, as part of the property pressure and through a bid process where we reached out to dozens of companies sort of thing, the best option wanted to take the deductible from $50,000 to $250,000. And that was with a 20% rate increase. So that just kind of shows the amount of rate pressure. So with that being kind of a not ideal budget situation to plan for a $250,000 deductible, there are specialty insurance products you can go out and buy a separate policy that's like a buy down. So it essentially makes your property deductible back to what it is, but then you have to pay a premium for it. So we've been doing that the last 2 years as well. So that's what that wind hail deductible buy down is for, is to mitigate the potential risk of having a claim and having a significant deductible. General liability is your main slips, trips, and falls for customers, patients, etc. If they tripped or slipped or did something like that, parking lot, etc. Auto is pretty straightforward. Again, we've got an auto fleet that we manage and stay on top of and have normal auto liability like most of us probably have in the room. Umbrella and excess are pretty similar, it's just different terms. When it's the umbrella carrier is usually the same carrier as your general liability carrier, and the med-mal carrier, the excess is saying, hey, we feel that to mitigate risk we need more. So we go to excess carriers and they will then sit on top of the umbrella carrier. So Coveris is who writes the general liability, the medical malpractice, and then the first umbrella. We've gone to an excess carrier to get additional limits. That's something I'm going to circle back to, just to kind of mention to the board, is back to your mind. We've kind of pushed it to the forefront to say, hey, you're the ones making these decisions, but it would probably be best to not run this by, but mention it to the board, seek approval, make sure everybody's on the same page, because there is no right answer. We can talk about return of investment, kind of like Christy did with financials on a deductible, and you can kind of make a decision, but tell me how bad of a liability claim you're going to have, and then I'll tell you how much liability to buy. So it's hard to know. So you really just have to really think through it, see what's happening in the state. So we have a lot of discussion on what are the verdicts in the state the last couple of years? What are we seeing as a social trend when there are verdicts, of what are they being awarded and what are they being negotiated down to? And that's very tricky. The next two lines are your hospital's professional and provider professional liability. Obviously, significant exposure for a facility like ours. Employee benefits mainly stems around health insurance and other types of benefits that are offered if an employee had an enrollment issue and there was a mistake made, for lack of better terms, through that, or awareness, etc. That's why it's not very expensive. Obviously, we have a full legislature and they stay on top of that, so that's why that's very modest. The executive package is something that should be important to you guys as well from the standpoint that this does directly affect you. This is where the directors and officers comes in, as well as the employment practices liability. So if there was a claim or an alleged claim around mismanagement, fiduciary responsibilities, wrongful terminations, potentially the board could get drug in on that from the standpoint of oversight, management, etc. So overall, that is one limit I'll hit on. We do carry a 4 million directors and officers limit, so you're aware. So if there's any further questions on that, again, I can circle back to that here at the end. The miscellaneous E&Os, we actually have a credentialing errors and omissions policy because the hospital does do some credentialing. Cyber, the cyber market's probably pretty similar to property because we've seen so many cyber incidents the last few years. Everybody's aware because it's generally on the news when these happen. We've worked with Jeff and other folks extensively here the last couple of years to make sure that we're doing all the patching and all the IT terms that I don't understand that those folks do, and they know what they're doing from the standpoint of what they have to have implemented, how they have to have it implemented. Remote access has been really important. You know, for any business that has cyber, if you don't have protections for somebody checking their email at home or even on their phone, that's been an area that has been a focal point for the cyber industry. Crime would be employee theft. Again, knock on wood, never going to happen, but there are those situations that do arise where there is a crime policy out there for employee theft. The airport owners and operators liabilities for the helipad. And then the FNIC, that's First National Insurance, that used to be Harry Coke, tied in with Shelby County State Bank. That is the fee that they charge for administering the program. Lots there that I'm trying to summarize, but again, we generally go through a 40-page packet with Barry and Christie every year, and I can circle back to this part of it. I will go through those details with you. The one again that I wanted to circle back on was the, I'm going to call it umbrella excess. We reached out to the hospital associations and asked for some information statewide. They provided it through that process. You know, again, we always say, hey, there is more available because we don't know the right number to buy either. There was an Iowa City verdict that was 100+ million. You know, I'm going to say we're not, but it's not my decision, but we're not going to buy $100 million of coverage because that would be so expensive that it wouldn't be able to be managed. But generally, those verdicts are negotiated down, if I'm using, give me the right legal term here, from the standpoint of what they ended up actually being paid. Again, we have a $1 million E&O policy with a $5 million umbrella with $5 million excess, so we're at 11 through this process last year. We just showed what another 10 would cost through a review of that, and I'm assuming Barry probably did some research too with peers, etc. The hospital chose to buy another $5 million, so essentially we're at 16. I mean, benchmarking across the state, that's above average. It's not double what everybody else has, but we're just trying to stay proactive ahead of it to not put ourselves in a situation where we have a large verdict and we're underinsured. So, again, that's a tough question to answer as to how much should we buy. Nobody can answer that question, to be frank. So it's buy what we think puts us in a positive situation that we're above average, that would protect us as best as possible, and beyond that, I don't think anybody who says, well, the right answer is this, I don't know how you would come up with that. So.
There is a tort reform legislation this year. There has been for the last 2 or 3 years. I think the Iowa Hospital Association, of course, is advocating for that. They feel a little bit better about it this time around. But there is legislation in both the House and the Senate kind of making its way through. Too early to tell where that will go. But basically it would cap non-economic damages at $1 million. So these $100 million settlement or jury verdicts would be minimized or would be reduced significantly if that does make it through. So just to let you know, that is out there, and that, I think that plays right into the report on insurance today, so.
Yeah, FNIC sent something too that compared states, and for help me here, and it doesn't really matter the state, but I think it was 3: South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, and maybe one other state. And our premiums compared to a state that has this is more than double, and that's why. So they're showing the legislators like, hey, here's the burden you're putting on public hospitals in the state of Iowa. You know, yes, do people who have something happen to them deserve something? Of course, but we've got to have some reasonable caps that you can plan, because again, we can't budget plan for a $100 million umbrella. How would every hospital manage that? So something fair and reasonable hopefully is in the works, but let's see what happens.
Nebraska does have a cap right now. And I know Missouri must not, because
They were more than us.
premiums are higher than Iowa's, so. But any questions on anything?
Questions?
I just want to understand, so we're at a $16 million coverage, and then what did we buy our deductible down to?
It depends on the building, so they vary anywhere from 10 to 50.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Got it. I knew where we were, I just didn't know where we ended up.
Yeah, that was, we all
Yeah.
vomited when we thought through that. That was, but that's becoming the norm in the market. You know, big cities, New York City, Chicago, that's a norm. They see those when they've got $300-400 million properties.
Well, sure.
But yeah, the market is driving that from just us being a top 10 to a bottom 10 state. They're taking these stances nationwide.
So like those ratios and that's playing into that, correct?
100%.
Okay.
Yep. If you look at any carrier across the board, they all lost a ton of money in the Midwest. That derecho, again, some of it I always scoff a little bit at, because you're comparing stuff to 20 years ago and things cost more today, you know, before this construction stuff. But the first derecho we had in Iowa that was bad was worse than like the previous 10 hurricanes. So people don't realize how bad that derecho was.
So widespread.
And that's the thing, you know, a hurricane usually hits one town. Derecho like went from South Dakota to Illinois. You know, and it was hundreds of millions of dollars, and it just wasn't as publicized because it wasn't a big event like a tornado like Joplin where it hit one city hard. That was horrible. But the derecho was actually worse than all of those. So, and then we had another one 15 months later. So the 10-year trend in Iowa is like we live in like what Oklahoma used to be. So they're saying, hey, your rate's got to catch up and pay for that. Hopefully it calms down and we see it go in reverse, but
Never go down.
we'll find out. So it's not good for anybody.
So what's the cyber insurance cover?
You know, the two main things that you'll see, speaking in English terms, and feel free to step in here and help me, is they show up today and their computers say, you're crypto locked. Give us $1 million, we're deleting everything. And there was a hospital in Omaha that actually happened to, and the FBI gets involved, et cetera. And they have to figure out, are they in so deep that we have to pay it? Or do we have enough backups and systems in place that we can mitigate this? The other part of that is when they say, hey, we have your data, it's, hey, guess what I have? HIPAA protected information that you didn't protect like you're supposed to. So either pay us, or we're going to release all this sensitive data that Brent has, you know, an illness, a disease that he doesn't want to know about that's embarrassing, or whatever it is. So then there's all the fines and legal expenses you have to pay to mitigate that.
And that doesn't cover the cost of the ransomware part of it, does it? It's just the cost of fixing.
Like the software, is that what you mean when you say ransomware?
Well, like what you're paying them to get your data back.
Yes, the ransom fee is part of that, it is in here.
What's that number?
I think we had,
The cyber was $45,360.
are you talking how much we would pay?
How much we would cover?
We would
Yep.
cover?
They don't love to put that on, especially when we're on
Sure.
camera, it's in your
Yeah.
packet.
Okay.
So we generally try to say that we don't want to say that out loud in case somebody's watching the board meeting, but that number is in your packet, or I can tell you what it is. But yes, that would be, the hospital would pay it, and then it's a reimbursement coverage. Yeah. Yeah, so the other part of it is, which this happened, I read on the plane here like 18 months ago, like we almost had the largest like nationwide disaster where, and it was talking about hackers and IT guys were simple when the computers were starting to kind of shut down like 2-3 years ago. You remember this, Jeff? And really then you can't function. So you show up for surgery today and the doctor can't access anything, you're just shut down. And then things are getting rescheduled and income lost and somebody dies because of it and those things. There's coverages enforced for that of, how do you function now in today's world when you don't have Epic with accessing medical records? Well, we've locked it all. You're out. How long are you shut down for? 3 weeks? Well, then what do patients do? What does the hospital do? How does it function? So cyber, they bring in a full team at that point, and you basically have the FBI here with you, and they are hand in hand trying to figure it out and sort through it and get through it as quick as possible. But they did pay the ransom a couple years ago. Time flies. 3-4 years ago, it was a 7-figure ransom they did in that case.
Wow.
It's real.
Very.
All right, if there are no other questions, we need approval of the 2023 insurance coverage as presented. If I could get a motion, please. Motion from Mike, second, please.
I'll second
Terry.
the approval.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Barry?
Right, I want to talk about the Ambulance Commission Joint Operating Agreement. We want to amend that, thanks Brent. So do we have a PowerPoint for this, don't we?
No.
All right, so, and the operating agreement's actually in the board packet, pages 13 through 19, the amended agreement. So what's happening, I think I've kept you in the loop on this quite a bit. Medevac will be retiring in the next 3 to 4 years. We've had a group of stakeholders that have been meeting since April, talking about how we're going to transition and what we're going to transition to for ambulance services in Shelby County. Talked a lot about different options, possibly a hospital-ran ambulance service. We looked at another private entity as an option, but we're leaning a lot more towards a county-run ambulance service. And in order to do that, we would go to a vote in November of '23 to approve essential service. That would allow the county to do a tax, and that would be able to fund that new service, county-run service, out in the future, most likely starting July 1 of 2025. But what we're doing today really is more related to our current ambulance commission and continuing the service with Medevac. This agreement will act as a bridge to that new model. What we've seen is kind of a changing landscape as far as what it costs to hire EMTs and paramedics. We've seen a significant decrease in volunteers over the years. And really the impact it's having is that we're seeing an increase in the cost, fairly significant increase in the cost. And I did review this all with the Finance Committee, I think it was last week, so we did talk about this in quite a bit of detail. One of the things that we as a commission wanted to see happen to be able to help cover the costs is to add the county to, currently, I can actually skip to the next page here and tell you what the current ambulance commission looks like. Right now it's just the hospital and the city. The hospital's contributing 2/3 of the funds, the city's contributing 1/3. We have 2 representatives on the board, on this board, myself and Janine. There's 2 city representatives, the mayor and the city administrator, and then Dr. Markham is our Trauma Services Medical Director. The term right now is perpetual. So what the main changes to the agreement that I'm asking for approval today would be to add the county. They would have 2 representatives, so we'd go from 5 board members to 7 board members. It would include one of the Board of Supervisors and the president of the Shelby County Emergency Management Association, which is currently Neil Gross. So they would be added to the commission. The funding, well, I'll have to kind of explain that. It's a little bit complicated how we came up with those percentages. But the hospital would be 55% of the funding, the city 27%, and the county would be 18%. And I'll talk about that on the next slide, but this will dissolve. This new will no longer be perpetual. It will dissolve July 1 of 2026. We believe once this new ambulance, county-run ambulance service is up and going, there will be no need for the ambulance commission at that point. So it will dissolve July 1 of 2026 with no action. If everyone agrees, we can dissolve it sooner, or we can extend it if we need to. So as far as the funding is concerned, as of now, the hospital is funding $112,200. That's all through an ambulance levy. We have a fund that is an ambulance levy that allows us to tax, and that's how we're generating that $112,000. The city is contributing $56,000. At one point, the county was involved in this, and it was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. They pulled out back in 2005. And at that point, the hospital took on their third. So that's how we ended up with 2/3 of it, and the city is at 2/3, or at 1/3. So the way the new funding has been figured, determined, we are keeping our current funding to start with. So the hospital and city, we're keeping our current funding, and then any additional funding needed is split 3 ways. So the county will take on 1/3 of that additional funding, and then the city and the hospital together will take on the other 2/3 of the additional funding. But we wanted to maintain that 2-to-1 relationship, financing relationship between the city and the hospital. So of that 2/3, we're taking on 2/3 of that, and the city's taking on 1/3. If that hopefully that makes sense. But that's how we come up with those odd percentages of 55% for us, 27% for the city, and 18% for the county. And that kind of shows, this is kind of the analysis or the computation that Christy did to show that computation. We will be increasing to, and this does show our budget, or our proposed budget, that will actually go back to the ambulance commission in April. We'll have another meeting. So this will be that 23-24 budget, what that will look like. We'll get approval from that ambulance commission, the new ambulance commission, in April to move forward with that budget. So the total budget will end up being about $373,000 for that 23-24 fiscal year. You can see that our funding will go from $112,000 to, does that say 205,000. The county board of supervisors have met on this, and they have approved this. They have approved being part of the commission and have approved the operating agreement, and the city has done the same. So once we get approval from the hospital, we'll be able to move forward with that new operating agreement. So I think that's my presentation on the ambulance commission. I'm asking for approval of that new amended operating agreement for Shelby County Ambulance Commission.
All right. Any additional questions? If I could get a motion for that, please.
I'll move the approval of the new ambulance operating agreement.
2080, okay. A motion and a second, please.
Second.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I have just a couple more items then, but I do want to point this out. Christy's going to talk about our tax asking for next year, so just keep that in mind. We're going from 112,000 to 205,000, so that'll show up when she talks about the tax asking for next year. So just a couple other things. I mentioned last board meeting that Dr. Espeland is leaving Omaha, and will no longer be coming out after February. He's our ENT, comes out every Tuesday, really big clinic. So we've been working on replacing him,
And we've signed a contract with Dr. Sherrard. He's with Family ENT PC based in Omaha, and he'll be starting in March. He does quite a bit of outreach clinics out in different rural areas, and so we'll be starting with him in March. And the other thing I wanted to kind of show you before we turn it over to Christy, we've got a video of what the new ED project, once it's all complete, what that will look like. And so I wanted to just give you kind of a sneak peek of what that'll look like. We'll be coming back at the February board meeting and asking for approval. We'll actually have the pricing. We'll have to do a public hearing for that as well. And we'll also be bringing the cafeteria and the gift shop back. That'll be a separate public hearing. But we'll be asking for approval to move forward with that project again as well. But let's go ahead and...
Okay, there is no audio to this video, so.
You can sing.
Did you?
I can sing.
So we're on Garfield Avenue right
Yep.
now, pulling in off of Garfield. That's where you would drop off if you're coming in with a car. You can see the ambulance. The ambulance garage itself won't change at all. I think we're doing some work on the flooring. So this is entering the vestibule and into the waiting room. You can see there's a little waiting area off to the left there, and then a little bit bigger waiting room straight ahead. There will be a partition between the waiting room and the reception area. We did want to create a little bit better privacy at check-in with this new project. And then this is taking you back into the clinical area of the ED department. Have exam rooms on the right, nurse's station, right in the middle of everything. We wanted to have better line of sight to all of the exam rooms. So the architects have done a good job of accomplishing that. If you go straight here and take a right, you would go into radiology department. Here, if you go straight, you go right into the ambulance garage. The nutrition area there. And then heading back north, on the right is your 2 trauma rooms. And then a little bit further up would be your procedure rooms. So you can see there's really good line of sight from the nurse's station. And they'll have better ability to communicate with reception, patient access staff there as well. And then back out into the waiting room.
Is that wall where the reception, is that the old part?
No, actually, from the edge of the garage there straight over is the old part.
Okay.
We could show you the kind of the
Yep.
footprint.
So that's all new then?
So the north, this is the current north edge of the hospital.
Okay.
So everything to the south will be renovated, everything to the north will be an addition. And, see, I don't know, Jeff, do you want to make any comments?
Yeah, a couple things here. Notice this is kind of a notch in. These 2 rooms will be behavioral health, so we can have a nurse stationed here. On the outsides where all the equipment is, there'll also be a gate to prevent anybody from getting to any of that, so it'd be true behavioral health room. Staff area down here. We also have this hallway which takes us into the main hospital area, so people won't have to go through the ED to get in. This is our current seating area for the cafe. Give you a little perspective. We have a clean room, soiled utility, the 2 trauma rooms, 2 procedure rooms, a consultation room, so if the doctor needs to talk to the family, we've got a nice area to do that. Start out with the trauma room. This will also be sane. We have bathrooms and a shower. dictation room for the providers, a dedicated medical or medication room, so our Omnicell and everything will go into there. Also be key carded, so it's tighter access to who can go in and out. So very nice layout, pretty exciting time.
Maybe you could turn to the temporary ED. We're probably, I'm not sure if we've talked very much with the board about that, but, and Karen can probably help out with this discussion as well. We are going to completely move out of the current ED into temporary ED, which will allow for the project to be completed faster, I think like 3 to 4 months faster. Plus, you know, they'll be able to work in an area, nurses and doctors in an area that we won't have all that disruption, construction going on all around them. So this is, just to give you perspective, this is the visitor's entrance, the north visitor's entrance, and you come into that lobby, which is where our ED reception is going to be temporarily. Come down the hallway and you can see where the nurse's station is, and then as you turn back to the east, this is where our temporary ER department will be located. And we've had a committee that Jeff and Karen have been on, working, I don't know, two months planning for this. There's a lot that goes into making a move like this. Jeff, do you want to make some comments?
Sure, a few more.
Karen?
This is a current locker room for all of the nurses. That will remain. We have 3 exam rooms across the back here. Currently Ann Buman is in this office. She will be moving further down the hallway. This room is kind of a double room. It's going to be our trauma bay. So as ambulances will park up in here, we're going to put a ramp into an existing walkway on the top that's currently an employee entrance. So when we bring somebody in from the ambulance, they're close to a trauma room and everything will be right there. This area here will be the emergency room nursing station. Doctor's dictation will be on one side. The nurse station will be there. And then, well, this used to be the beauty room. We've added sinks and everything back in, so it'll be our 4th exam room.
How long will that speed of the process up by having this?
About 3 to 4 months.
Okay, and the project will be how long in?
We're talking about 15 months right now.
Okay.
It also, by doing this, saves a little bit of money because you don't have to stage, do some work, restage, do some work, restage, do some work.
The 15 months include the reconfiguration of the temporary?
That is almost done, ready to go.
Oh,
So
all right.
we're pretty close on that, just a couple very minor things to do. Most of the work on this area will be the day that we move from the existing ED up to the temporary, moving all the equipment and hooking it up and making sure it all works. But we've put fixed walls, we've put wallpaper up. I think we have to have 2 window sills put in, and then it's ready to go.
The biggest thing is that ramp coming in. The ramp?
Yeah, the ramp is our challenge today, so.
Okay,
That's all I have.
exciting information.
It is. Exciting.
Yes.
Looks nice. Thanks for doing that. Whoever did that, that's really very good.
Yeah, Altus Architectural Studios, our architect did that, so.
Yeah, sure. I have no idea where I'm at. Okay, it looks like we're down to the approval of the, right? Yeah, the publication for public hearing date for tax asking.
Well, I'll hand these out. So we always take a look at where we rank in tax asking and tax rate, and I don't know that I have enough.
I don't need one.
And when it gets onto the PowerPoint, it gets a little there, so I'm just gonna hand out that one. So the first thing we'll start with is, based on our rate that we assess for property taxes, in the state of Iowa, there's 41 hospitals that we take a look at. We take out Broadlawns, which is the largest publicly funded hospital in the state, so it kind of distorts things. So Shelby County Myrtue Memorial Hospital we have the 13th lowest rate in the state of Iowa. We were, I believe, at 15 last year, 15th lowest rate last year, so we're continuing to reduce our rate there. And I just kind of, for the PowerPoint, I just kind of put more of our local hospitals there, but your sheet you have in front of you gives a full list of those hospitals. So if you want to look at it from a perspective of a graph, it's you can see there the average for the state of Iowa, and what Myrtue has, as you can see, is consistent with our going from 15th lowest to 13th lowest last year. We continue to see a little bit of a gap between what our average is in the state and ourselves. This is good in the fact that we have a lower tax rate and still can maintain a strong financial statement. So very positive for the community members in our community. Then if you take a look at our tax, at what we get from our tax rate, we are the 8th lowest tax dollars levied in the state of Iowa. And I believe we were 10th last year, so again, continue to see that gap there. We get little over $1 million in property tax asking. That includes what we asked for the ambulance commission, for the support of the ambulance services. And again, in a graphical form there, you can see that does continue to grow quite a bit. And this one would grow faster in the fact that, this has a lot to do with property valuations in each of the communities. And so as valuations go, even if somebody doesn't change their tax rate, their dollars are going to go up. So as Barry mentioned, with the tax, with the Shelby County, the commission, we're going to need to increase our tax levy for the ambulance levy, which you can see here is this levy here. In order to increase our tax asking, the $93,390 that we have for need for funding the ambulance to this transition period, we would need to increase that levy for ambulance service 9.9 cents basically per $1,000. That'll get us the additional $93,390 for the ambulance commission. We took the stance again this year that we wanted to try and keep our total tax asking that the hospital's receiving consistent. So in order to, because our valuations have gone up, we're able to reduce our hospital levy for our internal purposes by 3 cents. So in total, we would be seeing a 0.06 cents per thousand tax increase, and that's purely based on needing to fund our ambulance. So you can see the tax valuations in our area in Shelby County has gone up almost $30 million this last year. And you can kind of see those other numbers. We have to levy for 27 cents for our general levy, which is used for maintenance and those type of things. And then we get a little bit more levy above and beyond that for our Social Security taxes that we pay, the ambulance commission. There are lots of other levies that we could assess, but we don't. One for IPERS retirement, one for tort insurance, emergency funds if we should be in a situation where we would need to have some additional funding due to an emergency. But at this point, we are not asking for levies on those. So our certified budget, so we have to publish our budget with our certified budget within the paper for 10 days, no more than 20 days before our public hearing on that. With your approval today, we'll go for a public hearing on that on February 28th at 7:30. The certified budget is higher than what our operating budget that we bring to you in May or June. Because most of our funding is based on revenue. We always have that higher because we would really hate to have to go back. We don't want to be limited in the services that we can offer and increase our services. So we do budget higher for revenues and expenses, so we'd be at about 77,210,000 in revenues and expenses. So basically keeping our fund balance the same. Any questions on that?
All right, so we need approval for the publication of the public hearing date for both the tax asking and the,
Do you want me to do the amendment here?
yeah.
Okay.
I thought you had.
So due to that, we have to stay within our budgeted expenditures, and that budgeted expenditure does include our IPERS adjustment. And as you know, that's just kind of a paper adjustment, and that is all related to what the market value of the retirement fund is a year ago. So at June 30th of 2022, we all know the markets were down. In 2021, they were up, so we saw a very positive adjustment in last year's audit. We're anticipating we'll see a negative adjustment this next year. It also has to do with how many people are close to retirement age and the people covered by the fund. So it's kind of a two-part. We don't know until the end of May what that adjustment will be, and at that point in time, it really gets to be too late for us to do our budgeted, an amendment to our budget. So based on looking at where we are right now and anticipated expenditures and really looking at a large adjustment for IPERS, whether or not we'll get there, I don't want to be caught with having a large adjustment and not have the budgeted capital, the certified budget for that expenditure. I am recommending that we go ahead and amend our 2023 budget by $2 million, increase our expenditures, and that would be up to $59 million. That should cover any kind of definitely a large, we'd budget for a $700,000 negative adjustment, which is what we've seen in the past, but when we have a $2.6 million positive adjustment, kind of makes you wonder if we'll see close to that as a negative this year. You never know. So rather than taking the chance that we would be over our certified budget, I would recommend that we go ahead and amend that.
So in essence, you got 2.7 cooked in if you do this adjustment. Okay.
And as you can see, we've increased our budget for next year significantly for the certified, just to make sure that we're covering any kind of expenditures that could potentially come up.
Okay, so do we want to make
You
a
want
motion
separate
for
motions?
both? I think separate maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would like a motion for the public hearing date,
I'll make a motion for the tax
asking. All right,
I can
second.
second it.
Okay, Jan, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, then we also need approval for the publication of the public hearing for the amendment of the operating budget. If I could get a motion, please.
Also moved.
Thank you, Tom. Second.
I'll second.
Thanks, Mike. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
So just to be clear on that budget amendment, that doesn't affect taxes that we receive or taxes that anybody pays. It's just our total budget.
Okay. Christie?
Okay, the next thing is just information, well, you need to do, did we actually approve that, or is it just, it's policy? So IRS came out again on January 1st of 2023 and increased the mileage reimbursement. So that's our policy, to reimburse our employees for mileage based on that IRS rate. It went from 62.5 to 65.5. So just no information for you. We need to do corporate resolutions for all of our bank signatures, since we'll have new officers for the board. So Ruth will have those available for everybody to sign so that we can change our signers on our check, all of our accounts at all of our various banks. So we'll need approval for that.
I'll make a motion to approve the corporate resolutions.
I'll second that approval.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
carries.
Okay, in your packet also were the financial reports. We do go over this in a consolidated, maybe a little bit of statistical information. So for the 6 months ended December 31st of 2022 and 21, if you can see there in December of 2022, we had 4,387 visits to our outpatient clinics, which is lab, radiology, all of our outpatient services that we have, compared to 4,621 last December. Year to date though, we're at almost 28,000 compared to 27,000 last year. So we do have for year to date seen a 4.2% increase in our outpatient visits. ER visits were at 498 compared to 491 in December last year. Year to date, we're at 2939 compared to 3,000. So down a little bit there, not probably significant, it's 2.4%. Surgical procedures are at 119 in December of this year compared to 113 last year. Have seen a 3% decline in those from 681 from 702 to 681. Physicians clinic visits were at 3555 and 4160. Year to date, we're down about 10% in our clinical visits, 21,000 compared to 24,000 last year. We do have a provider that's been out for the last couple months, so that would account for some of that, and some of it is also, this includes all the visits that come in just to see a nurse for immunization, coag, any of those things. And we have seen a decline in what they come in to be seen to get COVID vaccinations and all those things also. So we are monitoring that on a monthly basis, looking at each individual provider to see if we can see any fluctuations and be proactive in that. Behavioral health, we were at 1201 in December of 22 and at 1244 December of 21. Year to date, we are up 13%, so at 8,000, a little over 8,000 compared to 7,100 for year-to-date visits to behavioral health. Average daily census in December was at 10.47 patients per day. Last year in December, it was 13.11. Year-to-date, we're pretty consistent at 9.28 compared to 9.48 patients. And you can see there, the biggest acute OB and hospice is our biggest decline in our population of patients. Births, we had 7 in December of this year compared to 4. We are up 11.6%, so we have had 5 more babies this year for the first 6 months than we had last year at 48 compared to 43. Operating revenue in December was 4.3. Expenses are 4.3. We did see from operations a little bit of a loss there, around 48,000. Non-operating, which includes property taxes, market changes, any other non-operating contributions, is 170,000. So for December we had $122,000 in net operating income from all sources. Last year it was 667. A significant part of that is a lot of federal funding for COVID last year, which we are not receiving this year. Year to date, we're at $930,000 for first 6 months of this fiscal year compared to 2.7 million last year. And again, 2.5 million of that last year was related to COVID. Any questions on that consolidated? Just looking at your financial reports, you got the balance sheet and the income statement, which give you a little bit more detail in your financial packets. Again, we continue to have significant enough cash flows, investments. Our financial status is very strong at this point in time.
Any questions for Christie? We need approval for the monthly financials. If I could get a motion, please.
Moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That same sign. Carries.
And you see, you do still have the 4-year comparison. So we've just been trying to keep track too with COVID, and I think this is in your packet also. So just to kind of just highlight, it's just we've seen increases from our 2019. So we're pretty close to being back. Surgical procedures the only thing that's still struggling, but we've had, change in staff there. Physician clinic visits are about where they were. So we're continuing to see a rebound from the pandemic.
Also provided in your packet was payroll and claims. We need approval for November and December.
I move the approval of the November and December payroll and claims.
Thank you, Terry. Second, please. Tom. Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The same sign. If there's nothing else for the good of the cause, I call for a motion for adjournment. Yeah? Mike, second. Here, here.